Today we're talking about a very important term in real estate contracts. It's a term that both the buyer and the seller need to be very familiar with, need to pay attention to dates associated with this term, and that is contingencies. In the video we're going to talk about what a contingency is, what are the standard contingencies, and some of the dates that are usually associated with them. My name is Christian Tiessen with Hubbell Real Estate. Looking forward to seeing you more in the video. What is a contingency? By definition, a contingency is a provision in the contract that makes the contract null and void if a certain condition is met. So these are very standard, they're common in contracts, and it's basically just a way for either the buyer or seller to back out of the contract and there be really no harm, no foul. The reality is the buyer or the seller's agent can write all sorts of different contingencies into the contract. But typically we see just the standard contingencies, and we're going to run through those very briefly. The first we see is the disclosure contingency. So this typically gives the seller 5 days by default to disclose any material facts about the property. So that's going to be, a material fact is basically anything that could affect the price of the property or the value of the property. So anything like noisy neighbors, neighbors that party a lot, if there's been a death in the house in the past 3 years, if the house has been used to cook drugs, or let's say there's been a leaky roof situation that had to be fixed. All of those are material facts that could cause the buyer to have some pause about buying the property and could potentially make the buyer want to back out. So all of those have to be disclosed to the buyer. They have to be shown to the buyer so that the buyer can make that decision on if they actually want to go through with the property, the purchase of the property. And if they don't, they have the option to back out of the purchase without losing their earnest money deposit. The next big contingency we're going to see is the inspection period. The default on this is 17 days for the buyer, and this gives the buyer time to inspect the property, right? They can hire an inspector to come in, which will work on behalf of the buyer to find every single thing that is wrong with that property. Well, that's their job at least, to find everything they can that's wrong with the property. They'll look for foundation problems, they'll look for plumbing, electrical, sprinkler systems, they'll look for windows broken. Anything that could affect the decision to buy the property will be disclosed in this report. Even on new houses, this report is going to be very, very long. It's typically, I've seen them up to 80 pages long. So the inspection contingency, again, is about 17 days by default, and that gives the buyer time to look at all aspects of the property. They get a termite report if they want to. They get the inspection. If there's a well, they'll inspect the well. They'll inspect the septic tank if there's a septic tank. In this period, the buyer gets to go through all their inspections, gets to physically look at the property and decide whether or not they do want to go forward with the process. The next big contingency date is going to be the appraisal date. So this works really on behalf of the bank. The bank hires an appraiser to come out and check on the property, to look at properties in the area, they call them comps, to see what the actual value of the property is. Because the bank doesn't want to be loaning on a property that's not worth what the loan is. So for instance, let's say someone's offering $600,000 on a house, but an appraiser comes out and says the house is only worth $570,000. Well, the bank doesn't want to have that gap, that $30,000 gap in value that they're going to be loaning on. So the appraisal contingencies allows the buyer or the bank to back out of the contract if the house doesn't appraise to the agreed upon purchase price. The last big contingency that comes up is the loan contingency, and this is the bank's ability to fund the loan. So if anything comes up with the buyer and the loan just isn't going to work, let's say there's a red flag, they lost their job right at the last second and the loan is not going to get funded, the buyer does have the option to back out of the contract without losing their earnest money deposit. Now, if all contingencies have been given up, we've released all contingencies as a buyer's agent, the buyer is at risk to lose their deposit if they back out of the contract. So it is very important to have your agent understand contingencies and understand that you don't want to release your contingencies if at all possible. Now, you agree to it in the contract, but not everybody plays by the exact dates in the contract. For some people, contract dates are more of guidelines. So you have to decide with your agent how you want to play the game per se. Do you want to follow the contract to the T? Do you want to force the other party to follow the contract to the T? Or do you just want to see forward progress in the transaction? That's up to you. It's up to you and your agent to discuss, but that is something that does need to be discussed between both the client and the agent. Once again, my name is Christian Tiessen with Hubbell Real Estate, and if you have any questions about contingencies or anything else real estate related, feel free to reach out. My number is 805-459-9834. We'll talk to you soon.